going to talk about OTT. I just thought it'd be useful. And just before I start, just house rules. Let's just keep the questions coming in case you have them, rather than wait for the end. I'll keep sort of looking every so often so that it's a bit, if things are not clear or if any opinions have to be debated, that'd be useful. Yeah. I thought it'd be useful by starting off at a definition level for the context of this panel of what OTT is. My view, which is sort of contrary to, not contrary, but slightly different and contiguous to yours, is it is something which is, firstly, individual focused as opposed to household driven. Secondly, primarily IP-based than any other mode of communication in terms of the concurrency piece. And thirdly, have a high level of personalization, localization, whatever the case might be, in the content mix, in the discovery, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, would you agree to that? Would you amend that? Would you add that? Let me start with Jeff, ex-TV producer, YouTube man, and now whistling away to glory.
Let me ask a question. Let me ask you a question. How many people have your login for your Netflix account?
We have one login. It's my wife's login, and it's set up so I can use it.
So that OTT definition, that means it's just for a family. It's just one person, individualized as opposed to family.
Well, it's, my wife has the largesse to share her login ID with me, which helps. But your point is valid in the sense that it's not necessarily, I guess, only individual. It could be collective individual in a household or individuals outside the household. Is that the point you're looking to make?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And I think the big thing I think John brought up before is it's not just an app. It's not just an app. It can't just be an app.
Yeah.
And personalization means you have to have a really, really high volume of content. And if you're looking at some of the OTT platforms being developed in very, very specific communities, it doesn't necessarily have to be personalized either. It can be very focused on community as well.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to define. We hear it all the time and no one really knows what it means. Everything that's not your cable box.
Okay, as an ex-TV man and now into a social man, having bought content for channels, run channels.
The way I see this is...
Sorry, can you switch this on?
The way I see this is there is content and there is audience,
yeah,
right? And there are platforms.
Yeah.
And to me, that the pipe is not very important because there's always going to be technological changes challenging that pipe. So if you ask me the traditional definition of OTT, I agree with what you are saying. All I'm saying is it's probably a word which is a bit overhyped at times. It's all about the audience and the content to me.
Is it necessarily about the moment, or is it beyond the moment?
I think the one thing I'd add there is the evolution from broadcast to participation, right? The idea that in an earlier era you could only watch or listen to sports content, but today you can actually participate in it. And Twitter is an example of that, right? Where you're actually watching video and talking about it at the same time. And it's an evolution of how things are, which allows for conversation between not just individuals but also institutions, and it sort of takes it to the next level, and it has many of its own uses, as you will.
So you want to have a go?
Well, I think I kind of said it. I agree with what Jeff said.
Okay.
But I do think one of the interesting areas you raise about personalization yes, it's IP, but the personalization is one of the great attributes of that allows for the IP and what you can deliver. And all of the functionalities and a lot of what we talked is features that you can deliver, and that's the beauty of IP, that in a way you can never deliver in interactive TV. That behind that red button, it was too clunky. It wasn't a real experience.
Yeah. Okay. So I think if I stand corrected, or if I was added on and being told to be a bit wiser, it's about the dynamic between the content and the user. It's a more equal conversation. It is a conversation, firstly, and it's an equal conversation. I think it's fundamentally one point of contact at a fit form functionality perspective, whatever form it might take. It's more the underlying architecture. Let me put the question against that background. What does sport mean for your respective businesses? I think we've heard the sort of the zone case and the opportunity. What does sport mean for each of your businesses? And let me qualify that by saying, what does sport mean for each of your businesses from a video perspective? Make it a bit more sharper. Go for it.
Sports is fundamental to Twitter. If you open the App Store today and you search for Twitter, you see the definition or description of the Twitter app as live news, sports, and chat. And it's something that's evolved over a period of time to become as an open public platform that draws people to conversations that they're interested in, especially in the moment. It also mirrors what broadcast does, right? If you see most broadcasts around the world, or the most viewed broadcasts around the world are sports broadcasts, and that translates to Twitter as well, because the conversation relating to that broadcast usually goes up. So this year, for instance, during the biggest moment, the peak that happened on the platform was when Kylian Mbappe scored the 4th goal in the final of the World Cup. And it wasn't just the fact that France was winning the World Cup, but the fact that you've discovered a new star, and the entire world is then talking about him. And it's a good indication of where people's minds are, sort of a repository of human thought, if you will.
Let me go to Jeff, and then I'll come to you, Joy, because I think you have a slightly different kind of take in this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, no, what is sport to us? I mean, sport to us, because we're...
Sport video.
Sport video.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really interesting sitting between Facebook and Twitter right now, because sandwiched between the two, I would say there's a lot of conversation in the world that is taking place on these platforms that can be skewed as somewhat negative, or somewhat perhaps focusing on what separates people and what really drives divisions between different groups of people. And sport is really the place where we come together in a real positive sense and really move forward. We really move forward in terms of where our company was created when a father was sitting next to his son watching television and was watching sport news, and they were talking about sports, and the ad breaks were all performance-enhancing drugs, and that was what was becoming performance-enhancing drugs with Viagra ads in the middle. And he said, how am I going to bridge this difference between my son and myself, because sports is so important to me? Wow. And how do I create something where I can bridge generations? And also, as we see, bridge nationalities. And that was really the nascent quality of what really created Whistle Sports. And I think what's really important is we often miss when we sit in these panels and stuff like this, is why is sports video so important? It's because sports is where we get together and we talk about a common passion, and we do it in a really positive fashion. And we kind of lose sight of this when we really get into the nitty-gritty of this thing. And the reason we really work in sport, John and I were talking about this before, was just the passion and love that people have for sport in and of itself, and that we have to find a way to make sure sport is on the forefront of all these technology innovations. Otherwise, we're talking about stuff on Twitter and Facebook of things that are perhaps the things that divide people.
How old was John's son at the time?
He was about 10 years old at the time.
There you go. That's a nice segue into Joy's son, who's about 12 now, or 11 now. From a first-person perspective, what is his view of what Daddy does now in terms of playing on Facebook, ESPN, different? And for you, do you resonate with what Jeff just said?
He's 13 and they don't speak much nowadays. So he's 13 and they don't speak much nowadays. So it's very difficult to find out.
Not to you anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I'll go back to your previous question as to what does sports mean for Facebook.
Yeah.
We are a very mission-driven company, and the mission is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. And community is at the heart of everything we do. And we have found that sports is inherently social. It's inherently, it drives conversations. It brings people together. It builds community. And I think sports is extremely important in our attempt to fulfill our mission.
John, is this the age of co-opetition in sports media? In terms of IMG is an agency which has launched a direct-to-consumer service. Perform is an agency which has launched a direct-to-consumer service. Twitter has made some investments, not that many, but certainly stateside. Facebook has made some investments as well, which are sort of comparable. But is that the new normal, or do you feel that this is the period of transition as you go from one ecosystem to the next?
We've never been an agency. We would definitely say we've never been an agency. But I think what you have to understand, that we are going through a huge change in the industry, and both technological change and what that delivers and the opportunities that delivers, and obviously, in terms of the social platforms and where they're going and what they're looking at doing, and the evolution of those social platforms as they as they mature, and how they want to build those communities. But you know, it's a very difficult time, I think, in the agency world. The idea of being an intermediary between a rights owner and the ultimate, you know, the
buyer.
the buyer, the you know, because ultimately the consumers have a lot of, you know, choice. You know, we're in a market where, you know, a lot of people have been talking about piracy, and you know, it's a huge problem. You know, that's a huge problem for the industry. It's, you know, it's not something that, you know, we can say, oh, it's one person's problem. It's a problem for the industry.
Yep.
Because ultimately, what we're doing is recycling money through, you know, through the industry.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's a challenge. So I think what each company is doing and where is looking at really where their strengths are, where the opportunities are, and how they play in that space in the future.
Would it be fair to say that competition's at three different levels? There's the traditional trade partner rivalry competition. There's piracy, which, if you look at a business, the business is created by creating value and capturing value. You're not capturing value, therefore you haven't got a business, right?
Yep.
And is it also competition in terms of the consumer, the eyeballs, actually having multiple opportunities, most of which are pretty decent. They're free. Last time I checked, free is quite cheap. And therefore, in terms of value creation, value capture, is that sort of where we're going? Is that a tiered level that we need to look at?
Well, I think what it all comes down to affordability and what will people pay? You know, the challenge is the big bundle. You know, we've lived in a world of the big bundle for 20 odd years. The big bundle is under immense, you know, pressure, and that puts a lot of pressure in terms of what content is valuable and what do people value. I think really ultimately sport is the last bastion of appointment to view. It's it is the passion center. It's the reason, you know, why do you want to know? Why do you want to be in the know? Why do you want to know the score before your friends? You know, all of those, it creates stories. It creates chatter. It creates all of those things. So look, sport has huge value because of that, but we have to recognize that the availability of free content and that you know, that is a challenge. That's you know, what will the ad model be sufficient to, you know, supplement what you're losing in pay? You know, I don't believe, not for rights holders it isn't, or not to the levels they're currently getting.
Yeah.
That's the challenge, because, and don't forget, that money then gets reinvested in improving.
That's how the game, I mean,
it's how it all works.
One of my biggest learnings when I joined the ICC, I'd sort of worked agency side, broadcaster, and federation, was it's a 150 headcount company. There are 14 people in the commercial team. That's it. There are 64 in grassroots and game development. So, and you know, 95% of the business dividends goes to the shareholders. I get your point. Do you want to contribute something? Because I have a question for you, but go ahead.
I was thinking, like, you know, when I was at YouTube, I used to have this phrase when I tried to get different, we had to talk about collaborations across channels. And we used to speak about the fact that we're all at war together against cute cat videos. It's the cute cat videos that is a truly unifying force. If we can all work together and understand we're all fighting together against that, I think we'll all be able to work. But I think what is interesting in terms of this whole thing is this whole concept of are we frenemies or what, is the fact is you need these two platforms to create awareness of the existence of DAZN. So when we're talking about our plan to help support OTT offerings, it's like social is the best way to get audience and tell people why and what's coming up. You have both, you know, really powerful mechanism for near real-time notification of events with a click off site, and you have similar things with Instagram over here. So at the same time that you guys are starting to put live content up and live sports content and licensing rights, you are still an amazing marketing platform. So it's really, the waters are really muddy. So if we could just unify around our hating cute cat videos, I think that's a start.
And just, yeah, I completely agree, because our best, the best platforms for us to attract our users are definitely, you know, through Google, Twitter, and Facebook. You know, it's
the demand funnel argument. I get it. You go to where the masters are, and you go from there.
Grow the funnel.
If I could just pick up on it, because on what you said previously, John, about appointment of view, the power of the sports genre is about the appointment of view. On this panel, we've got, you know, two large players who acquired live linear long-form rights. And we've got two other partners who are enabling short-form content, typically from a video perspective outside the live window. What are your thoughts? And you mentioned about ad sales funding actually meeting federations' requirements. Jeff, I'll go to you first, then come to Anish. Historically, you go back 20 years before pay TV took off, free-to-air and sponsorship was the big model for television. Do you see in the next 5, 8, 10 years at some point where content around the match window, around the match, will end up actually supplementing a third, if not half, of what federations are making through traditional rights fees?
I mean, I don't think we're doing half what we could do. We're not even doing a quarter of what we could do on behalf of the sponsors.
Give us some numbers. Give us some quantification so the audience has an appreciation.
I mean, I would just look at the fact that when I deal with brands that are trying to deal with the sponsorship packages, they will pay for the hoardings on the side of a game that will be behind a paywall. And it's like, there's no activation around that sponsorship beyond just the hoardings on the side of the stadium with the hope that the camera glances at it a significant amount of the time. And I'm supposed to derive some sort of benefit as a consumer from seeing the hoarding of some organization. I worked in sport for a long time. I still don't know what Gazprom does or where I can buy Gazprom, right? And they're great sponsors of the Champions League, right? But for some reason, the fact is you have to, the stuff around it allows you to tell stories to activate the sponsorships around this even before you go behind a subscription or paywall model to get to the actual content. And the smart brands are out there telling stories about their brands tied to the sport, and then the dumb brands are just basically sitting there saying it's on the side of the stadium and it's enough. And you know, if I could quantify it, I was dealing with a very large sports federation that was having problems with sponsorship around one of its key events. And they sat there and said, our audience is not reaching, the sponsors, McDonald's and Coca-Cola, were stepping away because they were not reaching a 13 to 30-year-old audience. They needed to reach that audience. And we looked at their social offering, their Facebook, their YouTube, their Twitter, and we sat there and said, you have some of the biggest reach possible of any organization reaching that demographic. So the disconnect is between you as a sports body and the audience that wants your content and the sponsors yourself. There's so much more money that can be extracted from sponsors through these organizations, through both the free-to-air stuff that might be on the social platforms, paywall, but it requires creativity. It really requires storytelling. It does not work if you're just going to go with my name's on the strip, that's good enough.
Understood. Okay. Anish?
And that's exactly what we do, right? Make sure that sponsors have an opportunity to go and activate beyond just putting their logos on the hoardings out there. I think fundamentally, I think first as an industry, we're failing the fan if you're not able to help them find the right sports content at the right time, right? To John's point about cute cat videos are everywhere. And so you need to start helping people first find that. And I think the currency that Twitter is invested in is trust with our broadcast partners, because we see we come in peace, right? We're a complement to the broadcasters all across the world, and that's why we've been so successful with both them and the leagues in making sure that not only can they distribute their videos in real time to fans to make sure that they're seeing them, but that they can also make money off of that and build a sustainable model where they're able to work and perhaps, candidly, as things evolve, look beyond the live match window, because ultimately, people have time to spend beyond just the 2 hours that you watch a football match on the weekend, and there's no reason why there can't be more interesting things for them to do or to connect to or consume.
John, with your Perform hat on, you work with WTA, you work with some of the federations. What's your take in terms of what Jeff and Anish have said? Is it more a question of belief? Is it more a question of timing, saying renewal's coming up, but we have to be creative, and we've got 18 months to work out our package? So is it more about anticipating that the packages need to be changed, which then drives the DNA change? Or is it more about this fact that, I'm looking at the barrel of a gun, I've got to do something, and then you're more reactive? Where do you think the broader federation ecosystem is at?
Well, when we work with federations like WTA, FIBA, etc., we look at the whole 360, model. So how does this, so how are they going to do their live media rights? How do they build their social audience? How do they help their sponsors? How do they build all of this? So that's something that we spend a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I think it's one of the reasons why, the question, are we an agency? We're not. What we've done with those parties was really to say, what's your vision? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to take it? And how do we take you there? And I think, again, something like WTA, we look at it, it wasn't just that we've quadrupled their revenues. we look at their audience around the world. They've got 65 broadcasters they had, from where they were. And their social audience, their players are more engaged. They're actually more engaged with WTA. So, all of those are KPIs, and those are successes that you're trying to deliver. And so, that's a huge focus for us in what we're doing with rights holders. And I think it kind of comes back to, where is the model changing for the business? And I think you have to do that. As a rights holder, you've got to think of that, to the point of how you're activating your sponsors. It's not about just giving 2 minutes of perimeter advertising. Yeah. You've got to think, how does that work across Twitter, Facebook, all of those elements to give value?
It sort of goes back to Anish's point about the fan. I mean, from an ICC perspective, there's always focus on revenue. There's always focus on reach. And they sort of introduce the third R of relevance. Because sort of, from relevance follows reach, from reach follows revenue, and then the sort of virtuous cycle happens. I'm just curious in terms of, from a Facebook perspective, and perhaps Twitter as well, but, you deal with federations, you deal with broadcasters, and you deal with brands who are activating around their association with federations and broadcasters. You wear two hats. You do programming acquisitions and you do partnerships. How do you sort of manage that whole mix? It's quite complex, both from a team perspective and from a sort of stakeholder perspective externally. Quite a unique role that you've got there.
I mean, we see that to be complementary to each other.
I'm talking more about the executions. What are the sort of pitfalls and things?
I mean, even in terms of strategy, it's about, we make sure that we work with partners or we work with content who can build community and drive conversations. That's extremely critical to us. So some of the programming deals that we have done, you'll see that there has been history of either the league or some of the clubs, able to build that community and have that, the chatter around the live games. It's not just the live games. So,
just to clarify, is there a latent community which you help them activate, or is there a dormant community which you help them cultivate?
I think it's both. So let's say if you look at what we did with La Liga and why La Liga in India, is that clearly there were two clubs which had immense following, and it was extremely important for us to be owning that conversation or to have that conversation on a platform. So we don't see programming and partnerships to be conflicting. They're very complementary. It's about working with partners who can either distribute content or ourselves going and acquiring content which we can distribute and making sure that they're aligned to what we want to be having on the platform, which is, again, what Anish said, is have the conversations, have the stories. It's much beyond just being a video distributor.
I appreciate it.
We are just not a video distributor. We want to be owning the entire Johnson, the
360 degree around that content. How do you remain true to your mission of the community's focus, whilst at the same time serving people who along the way help you?
Absolutely.
You mentioned the La Liga, so I'm going to bring that up. I will not talk about any other football in the context of Facebook, unless Brazil. La Liga and, of course, Champions League in Southeast Asia, and sort of locating this whole conversation to Singapore, to Asia. What can the La Liga fan and the Champions League fan expect from their experience going forward? More of the same? Let me start with you, John.
Okay.
Well, we're going to look at launching next year, in some Southeast Asia, and I'm sure very few people here have seen the DAZN product and what we are, but as a product, I think it's not revolutionary in an OTT space, but by the time we launch, personalization, a lot of the features that are going to develop, I think, as I said before, things in terms of that scalability is going to be really, really important for us. But understanding the consumer, understanding the fan, living and breathing as a fan. So, a really good example, I think, is something like Champions League. I remember when I lived in Singapore, and when Liverpool did qualify for the Champions League back then, which was great, and waking up in the morning and going, how am I going to find out the score? You're very nervous. It's how are you going to do that? But now on DAZN, we won't be waiting for the linear schedule of saying when is it being scheduled. You wake up and it's actually downloaded onto your phone if you're going to commute, or you can watch it on your TV immediately. You can start it you don't need to know the score. You can actually start at the beginning of when the match started. You can come in, you can watch the highlights, before. So we're trying to come from the fan. Think of you as a fan and how you build around that. And also, how do you tell the story before? How do you drive that anticipation as well? So I think that's how we'll work with all of our partners as well to try and build that awareness. And I think it will be very exciting to see what in a +7, +8 hours from when those matches are taking place, how you still stay very relevant to the fan.
I feel like I'm playing poker for that answer. Joey, can we play gin rummy instead? What's going to be your plan? Because you've got La Liga, India, very different markets, partners.
Yeah, I mean the base level is we need to be creating a good product which is stable and make sure that the audience gets a good experience.
Yeah,
that's at the base level. On top of that, we want to make sure that there is sufficient amount of interactivity around the content. So we have had experts from Barcelona and Real Madrid interacting with the fans on real-time basis. It's been very well received by everyone. It's also about creating a place where fans can interact with each other, right? I think that's also very important. So we encourage content providers to make groups so the fans interact. There can be various layers of other social tools they can use. You can actually watch a game real time with a friend who is sitting in New York or someone sitting in Rio through a watch party. So I think there are various levels of interactivity and conversations which we are building and some of which we have built in. And the idea is we do not want to be just a video distributor. It's not about taking the TV experience and putting it out on Facebook. It's making sure that there is many more layers beyond just the live video.
Interesting what you say about interfaces, because I think, John, you made the point early on, saying this is about still having the big screen and enjoying the match on the big screen. Most of Facebook's interaction from a user perspective is mobile-driven.
Yeah.
Is there a new emerging sort of UX, UI that you're looking at? Conscious of confidentialities in terms of certain things have to be followed. It's almost like following something on Twitter on your mobile whilst watching the match on the screen. The two experiences are next to each other, real time, but the interfaces are different. You almost feel there's a overlay of the interfaces coming through for Facebook.
No, absolutely.
Or Instagram and Facebook, potentially.
No, and absolutely. You could be watching and having conversation on the same screen, or you could be doing it on different screens altogether. So we have rolled out certain products where you can actually watch it on a large screen and start interacting with the fans and commenting on it on a real-time basis on the large screen.
And this is only said half in jest to John's point about demand funnels. Are you going to be working with Twitter in terms of user acquisition? Or you have enough users on your platform?
I mean, we are an open platform. We are more than happy to work with everyone. So there are 700 million sports fans on our platform, and we're willing to collaborate with anyone.
Pretty okay. Jeff, let me take your perspective. In terms of rolling out new services like DAZN, in terms of rolling out new services or new offerings from Facebook on La Liga, to what extent is it that the user, they're launching at a time when the user is educated about how to watch sport on a mobile or through an app? Hotstar in India, a whole bunch of OTT apps across Southeast Asia. In terms of the live in-match experience. Do you think, because if you look at India from an e-commerce perspective, when Walmart came in, Amazon came in, there was a big view 12 months ago saying that all the Indian e-commerce sites have actually educated an entire consumer base, but not being able to make money. And the timing of these launches are actually timing for a large audience which is educated of how to interact and make the most of it. What's your sense from a consumer insight perspective?
Yeah, I think the missing component on this is like the functionality is great. We'll be able to watch it in high definition on through various devices. But the issue that we always face whenever you bring something like the La Liga into India is like, what's the story? How are we going to engage with younger fans? Younger fans have so much more going on in their life. I mean, we've seen it in this conference around e-games. We've seen this in terms of there's so many other things asking for their time. And when you look at the La Liga property, we're basically looking and saying, well, who's Barca playing today and who's Real playing today? And after that, you got another 8 matches of football that no one's going to care much about. And the problem that you face with something, or the challenge you face, is how do you get people excited about this? How do you get a young Indian audience that's going to sit there and say, I'm going to watch Valencia versus Sevilla? And that means it comes down to storytelling. And what we found when people are, and this applies primarily to Facebook in terms of we watch the live streaming operations, is they will put the live stream up there, but the content, the VOD content, is really awful. the storytelling is really mediocre in a lot of the sports offering. And you have to tell different stories because the platform demands it. And young people demand different stories than what the stories were that I would watch to get engaged with the sport. And you cannot take the if you build it, they will come mentality as far as live sports is concerned. You have to reach out to a young audience and you have to tell them why. The gateway drug for La Liga on Facebook is going to be FIFA, the game. And the people who are going to be your major ambassadors are going to be FIFA players, FIFA vloggers, and they are going to be the ones that, because their FIFA Ultimate Team will feature players from Atletico and Valencia, they are going to be interested. And when you put it in the context of FIFA, you're telling different stories, and I'm referring to the EA game and not the Federation. You're telling a different story about that young people will relate to. And the problem is if we tell the stories the way that we told stories in the broadcast space for the past 30, 40 years, we're going to turn off the young fan. And what you have to do is find a way through stories to turn them on. And it's not easy. It's not accepted just because you have a high quality stream that you're going to get an audience.
John, could I sort of, just 1 second, talk to you about, you've launched in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, well, Japan, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Canada. Let me draw a line there, because you've got other markets.
And Italy.
And Italy.
The UK, and the US, sorry.
What have been the learnings from going into a market for adoption, for education, for sort of, you know, classic S-curve, early adopter, early majority, yes, I'm there. Late majority is where when I have a business. What are the cultural nuances you found, the go-to-market nuances that you found, which are different or similar?
Well, I think every market is different, but there are similarities that you see flowing through. I think, you know, universal access in terms of being across all devices helps in terms of that education. But yeah, so, you know, obviously someone like Netflix has kind of paved the way in many ways, or Amazon Prime, that people are using and getting more accustomed to using OTT products. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's one of the key metrics, obviously, you're looking at when we're deciding which market to go into. But it is an education, and you know, a good example would be when we went into Japan. At the same time, SoftBank launched, but we had a relationship with NTT Docomo, which wasn't an exclusive relationship. It was still available across all devices, but we became known as the mobile product, and you know, and it was because it was almost guilty by association of someone else's product. And that took a long time to educate, saying no, it's about being on a big screen. And so we're constantly looking to evolve the user onto the big screen, because you know it is ultimately the best experience of live sport. But you know but mobile is still a very important part of the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you have challenges like that. You know, whereas somewhere like in the US, it's ubiquitous. You know, Netflix, Amazon Prime is in so many homes.
What about Canada?
Yeah, Canada was, you know, well, Canada was an interesting one because, again, you learn that how to give the best product for the consumer, we deliberately have a latency from a buffering because you want to ensure that it's a very clean, simultaneous. Now, there is a slightly longer delay than there is on something like normal pay TV. Mm-hmm. But then there are certain users who are watching to do in-play betting. So you have challenges like that, and so there can be a frustration. So we're trying to learn and be very local in everything that we do. We use the experience that we've learned across everywhere else. So it makes it easier when you go into an Italy or into an US to say, how can we use the scalability that we have in the most optimal way?
Excellent, thank you. Anish?
Yeah, I was saying that, to this point about storytelling, I think the best thing you can do is to make the storytelling authentic to your platform, right? So, this year, an example from women's cricket, for instance, where there was a young girl that had gone to watch an India match. I think it was an Australia-England match in India, and this account tweeted out, she'd gone there to meet the commentators, but the guards kind of shooed her away, right? And this women's cricket publisher just tweeted out to the commentators and said, she's here, there's a photo of her, this girl called Durga, with a cricket bat and cricket whites, who's here to meet the commentators, right? And the commentators, Mel Jones and Isa Guha, Anjum Chopra, immediately replied and said, ask her to wait, we're coming, right? Moved out of the commentary box, came on in, took photos with her, tweeted that out, and she went home happy, right? And sometimes this is what it is. Like I know we talk about numbers and we talk about like making sure that there are big things happening in the world, but you start with one fan. If you can make the day for one fan with whatever serves your platform the best, and on Twitter you have a highly engaged audience that's constantly receptive, and it's a natural place for public conversation to surface, that's what you should be doing.
So sorry, can you hear me? Jeff, here's a question. What does it take a federation or a platform to actually increase the incidence of such fan experiences?
Money.
Okay.
I was going to bring this up before. The federations, and you guys are too polite, right?
You're talking about a federation.
I used to have to be polite when I was at Google, but I don't have to be polite anymore.
Well, Google's got some money, so I think that issue is not there.
The federations consistently underinvest in terms of social. And again, you see it. You can see it all over the place. Okay, so the first thing is they need to spend money on social. It's not cheap, easy, or free, even though the platforms are free, to build an audience. The second thing they need is they need to have creative storytelling about their sport. They have to be passionate about their sport. They can't be dispassionate business people. And then they can find the stories that will really, really engage the audience. I always point towards my daughter and the circumstances. My daughter, unlike myself and my other kids, is somewhat athletic. And she participates in figure skating, swimming, netball, and a couple other sports in there. And she watches on Instagram baking videos. Where is the Ice Skating Federation? Where is the Gymnastics Federation? Where is any one of these, the Netball Federation, that's producing high quality social content? And then when they have audience here, they can upsell on their sponsorship side, and then the rights are more valuable to John, and he spends more money on them, and he comes with an audience that's built in via Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and God forbid YouTube. And then, and then seriously, why are they not seeing this, and why are they not investing in this space? What are they waiting to happen to really see that level of investment required to build a massive audience? When Rich and I argue all the time, where are the really successful cricket channels that engage with young people and get them to both watch cricket and get on the pitch and play?
Although, to qualify that, your point is not necessarily about federations launching those channels, but where are the sort of Copa 90? And that's your point, right?
But if Copa 90 won't come out for a sport like netball, then it's up to the federations to step in and fill the gap on this. And there's no reason why they can't tell these kinds of stories.
Which goes back to the point I was making with John earlier: 14 people in the commercial department, 61 in the grassroots.
Exactly.
Doing Mexico, Buenos Aires, Beijing, Hangzhou. Joey, got a point?
No, I think Jeff's got a very valid point here. And again, I could turn the question to you and ask you how large is the digital team at ICC? And one of the reasons is that it's very difficult to measure immediate ROI out of your social efforts. Yeah. So yes, you're having conversations. Yes, there are excellent tweets going around. Fans are getting delighted. But federations have been so obsessed with media rights and sponsorship rights, and this takes time. And I think this is very, very integral. This is a building block to valuations of media rights and sponsorship rights. And I think federations are seriously underinvesting in it.
But I think, just coming in on that, I actually do think that there is value in doing it because you get the data. And, if there was one, I think I said it the other night, that I never thought I would, stand anywhere or sit anywhere, say that, we're a data company. And other than Opta and Running Ball, but the data insights, the analysis, and what you get from Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, you can get a lot of that data. It's really, and that data directs your business, and it can, and so they should. I agree, they should invest in it because if you do get immediate returns, because you get the immediate returns of the data that you can learn from, that better influences building the community, which then, the cycle goes.
I'll give you a deep, dark secret. about using Facebook and Twitter as well is that I'll give you a deep dark secret. If you build a big following, you have a remarketing list attached to that of people who have watched your videos, of which you can use the ad units to sell tickets or to sell merch. And the fact is you already have an inbuilt audience of which you can market other properties to that is there that no one is using except for us. Yep. Because, and that you can also use that equally to sell your OTT platforms, as we've done in a number of different ways.
Now, I just wanted to add to what John said, which is, John, that is the way it should be. It should be that the federations should look at ROI, whether it's data, it's intelligence, whatever it is, and try to invest there. Unfortunately, most of them are so obsessed with their current line of revenues that I think they need to do much more than what they're doing right now.
I think in many ways, if you look at the behaviors of dominant television businesses who are not platforms, I think with the exception of ESPN, very few have been able to make a pivot into digital genuinely and or actually found the means of social media being almost a proxy for marketing. I'd probably leave that as for now for lack of time. I was conscious of actually the audience. You want to have a last go, Anish? I can see you moving in your seat.
Yeah, I was saying that
20 seconds and I can say thank you.
To address this, all I would say is that federations can start from their own strengths, which is the current TV broadcast that they have. And I know with the ICC and others, we work very closely to make sure that they've integrated fan experiences into the broadcast at a global level to get them started from there and get their social channels up and running from there. And then there's a lot to follow.
There you go. If you could please put your hands together. Joy, Jeff, Anish, and John. Thank you very much.